"Lila, don't play with your food," Nathan scolded, his eyes narrowing at our 10-year-old daughter. I tensed, bracing for another evening filled with his criticism. As I opened my mouth to defend Lila, she abruptly pushed her plate aside, the contents spilling onto the pristine tablecloth. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to." Nathan slammed his fist on the table, making us both flinch. "How many times have I told you? We don't waste food in this household." My heart raced as his face reddened, the vein on his forehead pulsing. I knew that look all too well, the precursor to his rage. Before I could intervene, Lila's small hand reached out and knocked over Nathan's prized baseball, signed by Babe Ruth himself. It rolled off the table and hit the floor with a sickening thud. Time seemed to freeze as Nathan's eyes widened in disbelief. He turned his glare towards Lila, who shrank in her chair. "You little brat! Do you have any idea how much that's worth?" As he rose from his seat, I placed a trembling hand on his arm. "Nathan, please. It was an accident." He shrugged me off, his attention fixated on our daughter. "This is unacceptable behavior, Lila. You need to learn some respect." Lila's lips quivered and tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm really, really sorry." To my horror, Nathan reached for his belt, and I knew what would come next. It was a pattern I'd witnessed countless times, his escalating rage followed by physical punishment under the guise of discipline. But this time, something shifted in Lila's eyes. Her tears stopped, and she straightened her back, her gaze locking with Nathan's. "No, Daddy. I won't let you hurt Mommy anymore." My breath caught in my throat as Lila's words hung in the air like a heavy curtain, lifting to reveal the ugly truth I'd been denying for years. Nathan froze, his face contorted in rage and confusion. "What did you say?" Lila turned to me, her expression a mixture of determination and sorrow. "Mommy, I've seen the way he treats you, the yelling, the pushing, the bruises you try to hide. It's not right." My carefully constructed facade crumbled as tears spilled down my cheeks. All the times I'd made excuses, all the lies I'd told myself and others, they unraveled in that single heart-wrenching moment. Nathan's face drained of color as he stared at us, his mouth agape. For once he was speechless, stripped of his control and power. In that surreal silence, I realized that my sweet, brave daughter had given me the strength I'd been lacking all these years. The strength to face the truth, to protect her, and to break free from the cycle of abuse that had become my life. As I wrapped my arms around Lila, holding her close, I knew our lives would never be the same. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. A hope for a future free from fear and oppression. A future where love triumphed over violence. The shattered remains of Nathan's prized baseball lay scattered on the floor, a fitting metaphor for the illusion that had just been destroyed. And in that moment, I vowed to never let anyone control or diminish me again. The aftermath of that fateful dinner was like a bomb going off in our household. The silence that followed Lila's revelation was deafening, broken only by the occasional clatter as Nathan paced back and forth, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "How dare you?" he seethed, shooting daggers at Lila with his eyes. "How dare you disrespect me like this in my own home?" Lila flinched, but held her ground. "I'm sorry, Daddy, but I won't let you hurt Mommy anymore." Nathan whirled to face me, his face contorted with rage. "Is this true, Janelle? Have you been filling her head with lies about me?" I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. This was the moment I'd dreaded for years, the confrontation that could either set me free or trap me further in his web of control. "No, Nathan," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Lila's telling the truth. I can't pretend anymore." His eyes narrowed, and he took a step towards me, his fists clenched at his sides. "Pretend? You think this is some kind of game?" Before he could advance further, Lila stepped between us, her small frame trembling but her eyes blazing with determination. "Don't you touch her!" Nathan recoiled as if struck, his expression a mix of disbelief and fury. "How dare you speak to me like that, you ungrateful little brat!" "Don't call her that!" I snapped, surprising even myself with the force of my words. Nathan's head whipped towards me, and for a moment I thought he might strike me, but something in my defiance seemed to give him pause. "This is your doing, Janelle," he hissed. "You've turned my own daughter against me." I shook my head, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "No, Nathan, I've done nothing but endure your rage and abuse for far too long. Lila's just the one brave enough to see the truth." His face reddened, and he opened his mouth to retort, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. "I'm done, Nathan. I'm done living in fear, walking on eggshells around you, making excuses for your behavior. It stops now." A flicker of uncertainty crossed his features, and for the first time I saw a crack in his armor of control. "You can't be serious," he scoffed, but his words lacked their usual conviction. "I've never been more serious in my life," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "This ends tonight." Nathan's gaze darted between Lila and me, and I could see the realization setting in. The years of manipulation and mind games were unraveling before his very eyes. "You'll regret this," he spat, his words laced with venom. "You won't have a penny to your name. I'll make sure of it." I squared my shoulders, emboldened by a newfound strength I hadn't felt in years. "I don't care about your money, Nathan. All I care about is getting away from you and your abuse." His eyes widened, and for a moment I thought he might strike out in desperation. But Lila's unwavering stance seemed to give him pause, and he simply shook his head in disbelief. "Fine," he growled. "Get out, then. See how far you get without me." With those words, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, leaving Lila and me standing amidst the wreckage of our former lives. As I pulled my daughter into a tight embrace, tears of relief and determination streamed down my face. The facade had crumbled, and there was no turning back now. It was time to break free, no matter what it took. In the days following my confrontation with Nathan, the atmosphere in our home was thick with tension. He would often storm out without a word, returning late at night reeking of alcohol. Lila and I tiptoed around him, never knowing when his dormant rage might erupt. It was during this tumultuous time that I reconnected with an old friend, Mariah. We had drifted apart after I married Nathan, his controlling nature slowly isolating me from my support system. But when I finally found the courage to open up to Mariah about the truth of my marriage, she was a pillar of strength. "Janelle, you have to get out of there," she urged, her voice laced with concern over the video call. "What he's doing is abuse, plain and simple." I nodded, blinking back tears. "I know, but it's not that simple. He's threatened to take everything from me if I leave, including Lila." Mariah's eyes hardened with resolve. "Over my dead body. We'll find a way, Janelle. You and Lila deserve so much better than this." Her unwavering support was like a lifeline, giving me the courage to take the first tentative steps towards freedom. With Mariah's help, I began documenting every instance of Nathan's abuse, keeping a meticulous record of his outbursts, threats, and the rare but horrifying physical altercations. I started squirreling away what little money I could, opening a secret bank account in preparation for my eventual escape. Meanwhile, Lila and I began subtly undermining Nathan's control in small ways. We would accidentally leave doors unlocked, misplace his belongings, and question his decisions in front of others. It was a dangerous game, but one that slowly chipped away at his perceived dominance. "What's wrong with you two?" he would rage, his face contorted in fury. "Are you trying to make me look like a fool?" "Of course not, dear," I would reply, feigning innocence. "We're just a bit forgetful sometimes." Lila would nod solemnly, her big eyes guileless. Nathan would fume, his jaw clenched, but he could never quite catch us in an outright act of defiance. As the weeks passed, the tension in our home became a palpable force, like a gathering storm on the horizon. Nathan grew increasingly volatile, his temper igniting at the slightest provocation. It was during one of these outbursts that the final catalyst for our escape plan occurred. "You ungrateful wretches!" Nathan bellowed, slamming his fist on the table hard enough to make the dishes rattle. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" Lila flinched, but I held her gaze steady, refusing to cower. "What exactly have you done for us, Nathan?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. "Aside from making our lives a living hell." His eyes widened in disbelief, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. But Lila's small hand slipped into mine, anchoring me, and I felt a surge of strength. "You think you can intimidate us with your tantrums?" I continued, my voice growing in confidence. "Those days are over. We're not afraid of you anymore." Nathan's face turned an alarming shade of red, and he opened his mouth to unleash another torrent of abuse. But this time, I didn't let him. "Save your breath," I said, rising from the table. We're leaving, Nathan, tonight. His eyes narrowed and a cruel sneer twisted his lips. You'll never make it without me. I'll find you. And when I do. But I didn't let him finish. With Lila's hand in mine, I turned and walked away, leaving him sputtering in impotent rage behind us. As we packed our meager belongings, a sense of determination surged through me. The storm had gathered, and now it was time to weather it, no matter what stood in our way. In the days following our declaration to leave, Nathan's behavior became increasingly erratic and menacing. It was as if he sensed the impending loss of control, and it drove him into a frenzy of desperation. You think you can just walk away from me? He snarled one evening, cornering me in the kitchen while Lila was at school. After everything I've given you? I stood my ground, refusing to cower. You've given us nothing but misery, Nathan. We deserve better. His eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, invading my personal space. Better? You ungrateful bitch. Without me, you'd be nothing. The stale scent of alcohol on his breath made my stomach churn, but I held firm, my heart pounding in my chest. That's where you're wrong, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. Without you, we'll finally be free. A muscle twitched in his jaw, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. But then a cruel smile spread across his face, sending a chill down my spine. Free? He scoffed. You'll never be free of me, Janelle. I own you, and I own that little brat of a daughter you've turned against me. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, and I had to bite back the urge to lash out. You don't own us, Nathan, I ground out, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. We're not your possessions. His smile twisted into a sneer, and he leaned in closer, his breath hot on my face. We'll see about that. Before I could react, he grabbed my arm in a vice-like grip, his fingers digging into my flesh. I cried out in pain, instinctively trying to pull away, but he held fast. Let go of me, I demanded, but my words only seemed to fuel his rage. Or what, he taunted, his eyes glinting with malice. You'll run away like a scared little mouse? You're not going anywhere, Janelle, not until I say so. Panic clawed at my chest as I struggled against his iron grip, but it was no use. He was stronger, fueled by years of pent-up anger and a desperate need for control. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, a small voice pierced the tension. Daddy, stop! You're hurting her! We both froze as Lila stepped into the kitchen, her eyes wide with fear and determination. Nathan's grip on my arm loosened slightly, but he didn't release me. Stay out of this, Lila, he growled. This is between your mother and me. But Lila didn't back down. No, Daddy, it's not just about you anymore. We're leaving, and you can't stop us. Nathan's face contorted with rage, and he shoved me aside, turning his attention to our daughter. You little brat, you think you can talk to me like that? Before he could take a step towards her, I placed myself between them, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and resolve. Don't you dare touch her, I warned, my voice low and unwavering. Nathan's eyes widened in disbelief, and for a moment he seemed taken aback by my defiance. Or what? He sneered, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. I squared my shoulders, drawing strength from Lila's unwavering presence behind me. Or you'll regret it, I said, my words carrying a weight and conviction I'd never felt before. This ends now, Nathan. One way or another, we're walking out of here, and you can't stop us. His eyes narrowed, and he clenched his fists at his sides, his whole body trembling with barely contained fury. For a moment I thought he might strike out in a blind rage. But then something shifted in his expression, a glimmer of realization that his power was slipping through his fingers like sand. With a snarl of impotent rage, he turned and stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Lila and me standing together, our bond stronger than ever. As I pulled my daughter into a fierce embrace, I knew that the tide had turned. Nathan's desperation had pushed us to our limits, and now there was no going back. The time for our escape had come. In the aftermath of Nathan's explosive outburst, Lila and I huddled together, our hearts still racing from the confrontation. It was a harsh reminder that our plan to escape had to move forward, no matter the risks. As I held my daughter close, trying to soothe her trembling, a sudden knock at the door made us both jump. My blood ran cold, fearing it was Nathan, returned to unleash his fury once more. But when I cautiously peered through the peephole, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. Nathan's business partner, Michael, shifting nervously on the doorstep. "Janelle," he said in a hushed voice when I cracked the door open. "I need to talk to you. It's important." I hesitated, glancing back at Lila, who nodded in silent encouragement. With trembling hands, I ushered Michael inside, my mind racing with possibilities. Once the door was closed, Michael didn't waste any time. "Janelle, I know what's been going on," he said, his voice laced with a mix of shame and determination. "The way Nathan treats you, the way he rules through fear and intimidation, it's not right." My heart skipped a beat as I processed his words. Had our struggles been visible to outsiders all along? Michael must have sensed my trepidation, for he pressed on. "I'm not the only one who's seen it, Janelle. There are others at the firm who know the truth about Nathan's behavior, both at home and at work." A flicker of hope ignited within me, even as dread coiled in my stomach. If Nathan's colleagues were aware of his true nature, it could either be our salvation or our downfall. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael's gaze hardened with resolve. "We've been documenting his actions, gathering evidence of his unethical practices and abuse of power. It's only a matter of time before the truth comes out and he's held accountable." I couldn't help but glance at Lila, a silent question in my eyes. She gave a slight nod, and I turned back to Michael, steeling my nerves. "And what does this have to do with us?" I asked, my voice stronger now. Michael's expression softened, a hint of sympathy in his eyes. "Janelle, we know what he's put you through, and we want to help." My breath caught in my throat as the weight of his words settled over me. Help, a lifeline we hadn't dared to hope for. "How?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of hope and trepidation. Michael reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small flash drive. "This contains evidence of Nathan's misdeeds, both personal and professional. Enough to ensure he can never hurt you again." He extended the drive towards me, his gaze unwavering. "Take it, Janelle. Use it to protect yourself and your daughter, and know that you have allies, even in the shadows." My hand trembled as I reached out and took the drive, its weight seeming to anchor me in that surreal moment. Allies. A concept so foreign yet so desperately needed. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what to say." Michael shook his head, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Don't thank me, just promise me you'll use it to get away from him. For good." I nodded, resolute determination surging through me. "I promise." As Michael turned to leave, he paused, his hand on the doorknob. "One more thing, Janelle. Be careful. Nathan is a dangerous man, and he'll stop at nothing to maintain his control." His words sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to let fear rule me any longer. "We'll be ready," I said, my voice steeled with conviction. Michael gave a solemn nod and slipped out into the night, leaving Lila and me to ponder our newfound allies and the weight of the evidence we now possessed. As I clutched the flash drive in my hand, I knew our escape plan had taken on a new urgency. The storm clouds were gathering, and this time we wouldn't be facing them alone. The weight of Michael's evidence, combined with the knowledge that we had allies working behind the scenes, lent a newfound sense of urgency to our escape plan. Lila and I knew we had to move quickly, before Nathan caught wind of the growing storm swirling around him. In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly, gathering what meager belongings we could carry and stockpiling supplies for our journey. Mariah remained our unwavering support, providing us with a safe haven to flee to once the time was right. "Are you sure about this, Janelle?" she asked one night, her voice hushed over the video call. "Once you leave, there's no going back." I glanced at Lila, who was studiously packing her backpack with the essentials we'd need. Her eyes met mine, shining with a determination far beyond her years. "I'm sure," I said, turning back to Mariah with a resolute nod. "We can't live like this anymore. It's time to break free, no matter what it takes." Mariah's expression softened, a mixture of pride and concern etching her features. "All right, just say the word, and I'll be there to pick you up." With our plans in motion, the tension in our household became almost palpable. Nathan seemed to sense the shift in the air, his eyes narrowing with suspicion whenever he caught Lila and me whispering together. "What are you two up to?" he would demand, his voice laced with barely contained fury. We would exchange a pointed look, then turn back to him with feigned innocence. Nothing, dear. Just talking about school. His jaw would clench and his nostrils would flare, but he could never quite catch us in the act of our preparations. Finally, the night of our escape arrived. Nathan had stormed off after another explosive argument, leaving us a narrow window of opportunity to slip away undetected. "Are you ready?" I asked Lila, my heart pounding in my chest as we gathered our meager belongings. She nodded, her small face set in a mask of determination that both broke and swelled my heart. "Ready, Mom." With trembling hands, I dialed Mariah's number, the burner phone feeling like a lifeline in my grasp. "It's time," I whispered when she answered, my voice thick with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "I'm on my way," Mariah responded, her voice steady and reassuring. "Stay strong, Janelle. Help is coming." As we waited for Mariah's arrival, every creak and groan of the old house seemed amplified, setting my nerves on edge. What if Nathan returned early? What if he caught us before we could escape? But then a familiar car pulled up outside, and Lila's small hand slipped into mine, anchoring me in the moment. "Let's go, Mom," she said, her voice trembling but her eyes shining with determination. With a deep breath, I shouldered our meager belongings and followed my daughter out into the night, leaving behind the prison of our former life. As we slipped into Mariah's waiting car, I couldn't help but glance back at the house one last time. The curtains in Nathan's study fluttered, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw his silhouette in the window, watching our escape. A shiver ran down my spine, but I refused to let fear take hold. "Not this time." "Drive," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. Mariah didn't need to be told twice. With a sharp nod, she peeled away from the curb, whisking us into the night and towards an uncertain future, but one that was ours to shape, free from Nathan's oppressive shadow. As the miles stretched between us and our former prison, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of exhilaration and newfound determination. We were free. And nothing, not even Nathan's wrath, would ever shackle us again. In the weeks following our daring escape, Lila and I found ourselves constantly looking over our shoulders, half expecting Nathan to appear and drag us back into his web of control and abuse. But as the days turned into weeks, and we settled into our new life with Mariah's support, the constant fear gradually gave way to a sense of cautious hope. It was during this transition that the first cracks in Nathan's carefully constructed facade began to show. Whispers of his unethical business practices and abusive behavior started to circulate, fueled by the anonymous leaks of evidence from his former colleagues. At first, the rumors were little more than idle gossip, easily dismissed by Nathan's legal team and PR machine. But as more and more damning evidence came to light, the scrutiny intensified, quickly spiraling into a full-blown media firestorm. "Have you seen the news?" Mariah asked one morning, her voice laced with a mixture of triumph and concern as she handed me a newspaper. My heart skipped a beat as I took in the headlines, emblazoned across the front page: local businessmen accused of abuse and corporate misconduct. Accompanying the article was a grainy photo of Nathan, his face twisted in a snarl as he pushed past a crowd of reporters. The caption read, "Moore denies allegations, vows legal retaliation." I felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief that the truth was finally coming to light, tempered by the lingering fear that Nathan's wrath would inevitably find us. "He's not going to let this go, is he?" I murmured, my fingers tracing the lines of his enraged expression. Mariah shook her head grimly. "Probably not, but we're ready for him, Janelle. He can't hurt you anymore." Her words were a sobering reminder of the allies we had in our corner, the ones who had risked everything to expose Nathan's misdeeds and provide us with the evidence we needed to protect ourselves. As the days wore on, the media frenzy around Nathan's scandals only intensified. Reporters camped outside his office and home, shouting questions and snapping photos, as he tried in vain to maintain his crumbling facade of control. "No comment," he would snarl, pushing his way through the throngs of journalists, his face contorted with fury. But the leaks kept coming, each new revelation more damning than the last. Evidence of financial misdeeds, sexual misconduct allegations, and even whispers of criminal activity. It was as if a floodgate had been opened, and Nathan's carefully curated image was being washed away by the torrent of truth. Through it all, Lila and I watched from the safety of our new home, a strange sense of karmic justice washing over us as we witnessed Nathan's downfall unfold. "He deserves it, doesn't he, Mom?" Lila asked one evening, her eyes glued to the news coverage of yet another damaging expose. I hesitated, torn between the desire for retribution and the lingering fear that Nathan's reach might still extend beyond our grasp. "I don't know, honey," I said finally, pulling her close. "But what I do know is that he can't hurt us anymore. We're safe, and that's all that matters." Lila nodded, her brow furrowed as she considered my words. Then a small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "I'm glad he's getting what he deserves," she said, her voice laced with a conviction far beyond her years. "After everything he did to us, it's only fair." As I looked into her eyes, shining with a newfound strength and resilience, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. My daughter, once so small and vulnerable in the face of Nathan's rage, had emerged as a fierce warrior, her spirit unbroken by the trials we'd endured. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, stronger, wiser, and forever free from the shackles of Nathan's oppression. His empire might crumble, his reputation lie in tatters, but we had something far more precious: our freedom, our dignity, and a bond that not even his most vicious attacks could sever. As the news continued to document Nathan's rapid descent into disgrace, a part of me couldn't help but revel in the sweet taste of revenge, not for myself, but for the countless others who had suffered under his tyranny. The monster had been exposed, and now he would reap the consequences of his actions, one devastating blow at a time. As the dust settled on Nathan's spectacular fall from grace, Lila and I found ourselves standing at a crossroads, faced with the daunting task of rebuilding our lives from the ashes of our former existence. "Where do we go from here, Mom?" Lila asked one evening as we sat together, the flickering glow of the TV illuminating her pensive expression. I exhaled slowly, pondering her question. For so long our world had revolved around survival, dodging Nathan's fury, plotting our escape, clinging to the hope of freedom. But now that we had achieved that elusive goal, the path forward seemed simultaneously daunting and exhilarating. "Anywhere we want, honey," I reaching out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "The world is ours now." A small smile tugged at the corners of Lila's mouth, and I saw a glimmer of the carefree child she had once been before the weight of Nathan's oppression had stolen her innocence. "I like the sound of that," she murmured, her eyes sparkling with newfound hope. In the weeks that followed, Lila and I made the difficult decision to leave our temporary sanctuary with Mariah and strike out on our own. As much as we were grateful for her unwavering support, we both felt the need to forge our own path, free from the lingering shadows of our past. With the help of the evidence provided by Nathan's former colleagues, I was able to secure a modest settlement from his rapidly crumbling empire. Not nearly enough to compensate for the years of torment, but a start nonetheless. And so, armed with our meager belongings and a newfound sense of determination, Lila and I set off for a fresh start in a new town, leaving the specter of Nathan's abuse firmly in our rearview mirror. As we settled into our cozy apartment, unpacking the few possessions we had managed to salvage, I couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought us to this point. The strength it had taken to break free, the courage to face the unknown, and the resilience to forge ahead in the face of overwhelming adversity. "Are you happy, Mom?" Lila asked one evening as we sat together on our second-hand couch, the scent of takeout pizza wafting through the air. I looked around our modest surroundings, taking in the mismatched furniture and the peeling paint on the walls. To an outsider, it might have seemed like a life of hardship and struggle. But in that moment, all I felt was a profound sense of contentment and gratitude. "Happier than I've been in a very long time," I replied, pulling her into a warm embrace. Lila snuggled against me, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "Me too, Mom. Me too." In the months that followed, Nathan's name faded from the headlines, his misdeeds and scandals replaced by the next sensational story du jour. But for us, his legacy lived on in the scars we bore, both physical and emotional, and the hard-won lessons we had etched into our souls. I would be lying if I said his shadow didn't linger, casting occasional doubts and fears across our newfound peace. But each time those whispers of the past threatened to overwhelm us, we would draw strength from the bond we had forged in the fires of our struggle. We were survivors, warriors, and above all, a family united by an unbreakable love that had carried us through the darkest of storms. And as I watched Lila blossom into a confident, compassionate young woman, her laughter ringing through our little apartment, I knew that our story was one of triumph over adversity, a testament to the indomitable spirit that had guided us to freedom. Nathan's reign of terror was over, his power and influence reduced to ashes. But from those ashes we had risen like a phoenix, our wings spread wide as we soared towards a future of our own making. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, unbroken, unstoppable, and forever free.